So we have three different professionals who have different approaches to publishing. So you're going to get a really nice gamut of publishing possibilities. And then they're going to be returning tomorrow in the morning, and Yvette over there in the corner, or not the corner, but in the middle with the hat, she'll be moderating tomorrow because I'll be doing my workshop. So I'm going to do, half hour to 40 minutes of each person, and then we're going to leave time for questions at the end. So if you can hang on to your questions and let them go through their spiels, that would be really good. Just briefly, I've been with the conference 36 years. I've been writing for like 42 years. I have my own publishing company. I do editing, layout, cover design, publicity, interviews. I do all of it. There's a lot of rewards in that. I've had some traditionally published things, but I've been around the block a few times. So in today's chaos of publishing world, there are lots of options and possibilities, and they seem to be expanding more all the time. So as I mentioned a few times, the conference has always been craft-oriented. From back in the day, from back in the 80s when I started, it was craft-oriented, built around the workshops. And that's why the Agents and Editors Day used to be really a big deal, because everybody would be packed in for the agents, because there wasn't self-publishing, there wasn't e-books, there was none of that. It was all old school stuff. So as things have evolved, and I started dipping my toes into e-books and audiobooks, all those things, we have expanded the program of the conference to be able to cover those other things that are now realities that were no longer, sort of in existence. So Grace and I have worked together. I think I started. I did back in 2019. I did guerrilla marketing in the 21st century, and I covered everything. Just me. I started off, and people were like blown away, and they really liked it. And I couldn't answer enough questions. There wasn't enough time. So Grace and I have been working together consciously to expand the program, and these guys have all come along. And I have great connections with some of them. So you'll see when they get up to bat, there's just a lot of good information. The other thing I'll just mention briefly, aside from the Q&A, is when you see them around the conference later and you want to pick their brains, pigeonhole them and get them. I have personally 2 brain cells that are up, if you want to ask. But these guys have great, different perspectives, different ways of approaching it. Anyway, enough of that part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each one individually, and they'll do their thing. And then after the 3, we'll do a general Q&A. So first up to bat, the leadoff batter is Holly. Did you say Kamier or Kamier? See, I blew it either way, right? K-Meyer. I got to remember that, because I always, in my mind, it's always Cameo. K-Meyer. Okay, we have Kmart right here for the Blue Plate Special. Holly Kmeyer. She's the best-selling author of Kingston Court, Choosing Hope, Lost Girl, a Shelby Day novel. I do believe they're all in the bookstore. And she's a curator for the anthology 6 Feet Apart in the Time of Corona. She co-founded Acorn Publishing, which is now a highly respected hybrid publishing imprint to a growing collection of award-winning authors. She's also an accomplished writing coach who leads workshops at writers' festivals and conferences. She is a former journalist and weather anchor with a resume that includes Channel 9 News in Los Angeles, CNN in Washington, D.C., UCLA honor graduate. She lives in San Diego with her brilliant and often sarcastic teenagers. Who doesn't know them? Yeah, no kidding. And then just the last little piece I'll say, I think we may go back 15 years or something like that. Yeah. So I'm proud. I'm a proud daddy. I'm proud to say that I got her into the conference, and she's been presenting. And I've watched her grow from starting Acorn. She's a real go-getter, a real hustler. Just reading what she's up to wears me out. So she's got just tremendous energy. She's all about it. She's all over it like spots on a dog. So now, I'll quit talking about her and let her talk about herself. Welcome, Holly.
I did want to start by saying, yes, I started these conferences about 15 years ago, and I was about as nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. And the thing that I have learned over these 15 years is at the end of the day, we come here to build community. And as the publishing world evolves dramatically, community becomes ever more important. So I know we're all here to try and absorb as much information as possible, and we're anxious, but really try and get at least one email from somebody you connect with here that you can have as a writer friend out in the world afterwards, and take the opportunities to meet people, because it's that community that is going to help build your resilience, which is how people win in the writing world. Okay, so I'm really excited to be up here. Today's talk is going to focus on the different publishing options that are, oops, I'm supposed to turn this on. Do it. Okay, I'm going to use the computer. The different publishing options that you have available today to you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how each of these processes work, and then what the basic pros and cons are of each of them. So the publishing options available to us today are traditional publishing, small press, vanity press, self-publishing, and hybrid publishing. And a lot of you might think that you know about each one of these things, but there may be things that you're missing that hopefully we can answer and kind of address some of those misconceptions today as we dive into each one of them. So let's start with the big 5 publishers. Who in this room is hoping to find an agent? Show of hands. Yes. Not surprised. I think that is where we all come in with the dream when we're growing up, is getting the literary agent and getting into the big 5. So let's go ahead and talk about how that process works. Unless you are related to somebody very high up in the traditional publishing world, and we're talking about the big 5 here, which is really the big 4 because one of them is focusing more on scholarly academic works, you're going to need an agent. So that will be your first step. After that, once you are accepted with an agent, they're going to send your manuscript out for submission. Now, they may work on it beforehand, but ultimately what they're doing is they're going to be sending it out for submission. And once, hopefully, if you get picked up by one of the houses that you're interested in signing with, the next step would be drawing up that contract. And that contract is going to include all the things that you're going to agree on ahead of time, as far as profit sharing, what your royalties are going to be, your agent getting 15% of whatever profit you're getting. And then from there, the publisher is going to handle the cover design, the formatting, and all aspects of distributing your book. So what are the pros? This thing is not going to cooperate. Okay, so what are the pros? And what are the cons? The pros are, there are no up cost front to you. Thank you so much. You end up paying on the back end of the process, but not on the front. There is potential marketing budget. Now, the way things are shaking out these days is the big 5 have kind of their own tiered system. So if you're at the top of the tier, that's where you're most likely to get that marketing. And if you're in the middle or the bottom, you're probably not going to get any, unless all of a sudden your sales start doing amazing and they miraculously shift, because they will shift if your book does incredibly well. But in general, a pro is that potential for marketing budget. You are more likely to be placed in retail stores. It's not a guarantee, but you are more likely to be. There is, for all of us authors, the satisfaction of being vetted, because we're all so insecure. We all want to be told that we're good enough. And when you get picked by one of the big 5, you have that feeling that you've been told you're good enough. They also have professional connections to reviewers, big reviewers, People Magazine, the New York Times. You have authors that are going to write blurbs for you. You have the potential for them connecting you with foreign publishing deals. The same with potential TV and movie rights representations. And chances are you will be paid some sort of advance. Again, this is a tiered system. You're looking at Prince Harry and Britney Spears getting the 10 and the $15 million. And from what I'm hearing out in the stratosphere, for those of us who are not celebrities, you're looking at fairly small advances, maybe 5,000, maybe as low as 3,000. They're small, but you're getting it. So that's a pro. Cons. It almost always requires an agent, and that's a time-consuming process usually. So con is you need to start working on your query, shopping for agent, and that is a process that could potentially take years, and potentially you could end up not getting one at the end of the process. It is a slow process, so even once you get your literary agent, if you get one, the agent may spend up to a year working on your manuscript for you, depending on the agent, and then they're going out and shopping, and that takes time. And then once you get a deal, if you get a deal, that can be easily another 18 months. So it is a long process. We have one of our authors got a literary agent right out of the gate. Her manuscript was shopped all around. It didn't work out. The agent stepped down. She got another good literary agent who spent time redoing the manuscript and then shopping it around. She got picked up by one of the big five. The advances usually are broken into quarters, so she got the first part of the advance, but then they dropped her. So 10 years later, she signed with us. It's a heartbreaking process. And one thing that I think is really important to know is that the top 5 these days, they take about 1% of writers who are not celebrities, who haven't already published something big. So when you're out there doing your due diligence to pursue the stream, don't feel like if you're getting rejected, it's because you're not a good writer. They are looking at your potential to make a lot of money. They are looking at your platform. HarperCollins, I met the president of one of the divisions there last year at the Quiet Writers Conference, and she told me she is in charge of a whole division that reaches out to influencers. And then they provide ghostwriters. So you're not even competing against just other writers. You're mostly competing against famous people and influencers on Instagram and TikTok who have a big platform who can then get a ghostwriter to write their book and have it out there. It's a difficult time in that regard. Although I will tell you the good news is, while it is the hardest time right now to get those big 5 deals, it's probably, I'm sure, the best time in history to get film and television deals. There's so many streaming services out there looking for content. So if you end up taking one of these other paths, and I know I'm going off topic here, if you end up going down one of these other paths and you put out a good quality book, you could end up getting something really great out of it, and you own the rights to your book. So yes, this is the dream, but if you're the 99%, you could end up finding a better dream. Okay, we're gonna talk about small press and what that looks like, and then what the pros and cons are. So with small press, you may or may not need an agent. It really depends on the publisher, and you're gonna wanna look on their website, and they're gonna be very specific about how you can submit, and if you can submit directly yourself, or if you need an agent. From there, either you or the agent is going to send in your manuscript for submission. If they like it and they wanna work with you, the contract is drawn up. This is where your money is all going to be decided right here. And if you are working with an agent, then they will get 15% of whatever royalty is agreed upon during the contract portion. And then from there, the publisher is going to handle cover design, formatting, and most aspects of creating and distributing your book. So once you're signed with them, from when you sign until when your book comes out, it's very much like working with the big five, whereas they're going to be handling everything for you. Okay, the pros and the cons. Pro number one, you're a lot more likely to get picked up by a small press. There's just a lot more of them out there. There is going to be a potential for an advance. Those tend to get even smaller when you're talking about a small publishing house, but there is that potential. A great pro about a small versus one of the big five is that the team is going to work closely with you. There may be a tier system, but it's the gaps in between are pretty small. They are relying on every single one of their books to do well in order to stay in business, so every one of those books matters to them. None of them are a roll of the dice. And then I just wanted to mention, I had written down what are the percentages. So, because I would be curious. So if you're with the big five, you're looking at maybe a 20 to 30% royalty on your print and 25 to 50% royalties on ebooks. And then the agent would take a cut of that. So what are the cons? Minimal marketing budget. A lot of us are hoping that by going with a publishing house where they're taking on all of the expense in publishing your book are going to be doing the marketing as well. And that is just not the case anymore. You are going to be doing the vast majority of your marketing and not just paying for it, but doing the work as well. There's also a lot more pressure on the author to succeed for the well-being of the business. And for some of us that are shy, that can be hard. So you want to know going into it that they may be going to these events with you, and there's going to be pressure on you to perform and to do the marketing and to be promoting yourself because they're relying on you. So that pressure is there. And perhaps the biggest con is you want to be really careful about the small press that you go with because the reality is they tend to go out of business. It's very difficult to make money in the publishing industry, and that is no different for these small press. Now, if they are an imprint attached to one of the big five, that's good because they've got some sort of revenue source. But if not, you're taking a risk. You're signing over the majority of your rights. If they go out of business, your book's kind of dead in the water. So you really want to be careful when you sign that contract that you negotiate what happens if they go out of business. And another thing to ask for that they probably will not say yes to, but it is worth trying, is not just that you want the rights to go back to you if they go out of business, but you want your files. Because even if you have the rights to your work, if you don't have your files, then what? You don't have your cover design, you don't have your edited manuscript or your formatted manuscript, you're still starting over from scratch, and you've lost that momentum. So if you can, try and have them give you those files as well, have that be part of your contract. Otherwise, you can be putting yourself into a corner and really limiting yourself. Vanity press, the big bad wolf. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time here because if you're here, you're a serious writer and vanity press is not for you. But I'd like you to at least know what it is so that if you hear about it, you understand. So basically, with vanity press, there is absolutely no need for an agent. They're not going to pay your agent. They don't, if your agent's not going to want you to go with vanity press, you're not going to want to go with vanity press. But there is no need for one. You do pay the upfront fee for the company to handle your cover design, your formatting, and all aspects of creating and distributing your book. And then you hand over your control and the majority of your profits. The pros. What are the pros? Why do they even exist? Well, you don't have to do any of the work. That's a pro. You pay them the money, they will do the publishing for you. There is an experienced team, and they are most likely going to make your book look professional. You're most likely going to have a logo on the back like Abbott Press. So ideally, you do have a nice looking book when they're done. The cons, and the reason why you hear so many bad things about vanity press, is they will accept absolutely anything. You could write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3 for 300 pages. They don't turn anybody down. So they accept everybody. They take the majority of your rights, and they take the majority of your profits. And because they don't expect you to sell your book, they price it far higher than the market price. And for a lot of people, that's really the kicker. You know, they go into it thinking, well, at least I'll have this great book. And then they realize their book is priced at about double what you would pay for a New York Times bestseller, because their business model is, I'm going to make as much money off of you and your mother and your best friend as possible. So even if you did put out something that was quality, it's not likely to sell. And again, now you've given up your rights to have a book that you can pay double what you would pay elsewhere for. So that's why they're dangerous. They're taking the majority of your rights, the majority of your profits, and they're not vetting you. And they're going to price it so that nobody else wants to buy it. So moving on from them. We're going to look at self-publishing. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but we're going to have Rick come up after Patricia goes after me, and then Rick's going to come up, and he's really going to delve into that because this is his world, and he knows it well. How many of you here are thinking about self-publishing? Just out of curiosity. Great. How many of you have self-published before? Any of you like to talk about your experience with that? Did you find it satisfying? Was it harder than you thought? Any feedback on that? No. It's hard. It's hard. So let's look at what the process looks like. You are going to format your manuscript yourself or hire a formatter. You're going to design your cover design yourself or hire a cover designer. You're going to upload your finished files to all the book retailers, plan and execute a marketing strategy, and then schedule events and promote your own book. What are the pros? What are the cons? Okay, first, the pro is you have all of the control. You're deciding on your cover design. Nobody can tell you no. You're deciding on that interior look and feel of your book. You get to pick your own pricing, your target audience. When you go to upload your files, you're deciding what your keywords are. You're deciding what your categories are. You get transparency in your sales, meaning you can log in to KDP's subsidiary of Amazon, Ingram Spark, which is where the bookstores are ordering your books, and barnesandnoble.com is going to be ordering your books, and you can see what your sales numbers look like on the daily. Sometimes they're a little bit delayed, but for the most part, you're getting as close to real-time sales data as possible, and you're getting direct deposit of your profits every month. So those are some pretty good pros. There's also the speed. You're not waiting on any third parties. Theoretically, you could upload your book next week. So you set the pace, and you decide how quickly that book is going to come to market. And there are no deadlines. Nobody's putting pressure on you besides yourself. What are the cons? There is a lot to learn. A lot to learn, and it's always changing. So while there is this wonderful, warm community of self-published authors out there that will provide you with information, the reality is the information is changing so often that you don't necessarily know what you're getting is still up to date. What worked on Tuesday might not work next Thursday. And so you have a whole lot of information to decipher and then figuring out what is still current and what isn't. Quality services are still going to be pricey. If you are not savvy at formatting and you're going to hire a formatter, you will still pay, depending on who your formatter is, anywhere from gosh, I've heard somebody say 150. I don't know anybody doing formatting for 150. Usually, I think you're looking at more like $500 or $600, and I've heard people that have paid thousands. Another con is that you can overpay in certain areas because maybe you don't know what averages you should be looking for. But if you're looking to hire people to do the different pieces of the puzzle for you, the cover design, the formatting, those things cost money. So it's not free unless you figure out how to do everything yourself. And then finding those vendors, vetting your vendors can be challenging. How do you know who is good quality, who isn't? That you don't have an experienced team to bounce everything off of. I kind of liken it to building a custom home. If you hire all the contractors yourself, you don't have somebody for you overseeing the whole team and telling you, maybe that's not a good idea. I tried that on 5 other projects and it didn't work out. You're kind of learning as you go. You do need to be prepared to make mistakes. You do need to be prepared that you may over or underpay some of the vendors that you work with. You're also going to find it difficult to stand out in the crowd. It's a challenge. 1.4 million indie books are uploaded to Amazon every year. So when you put your book up there, it can be a bit like shouting into a hurricane to stand out. It's more difficult to get into bookstores. A lot of bookstores can be snotty. You know, oh, you're self-published, we don't take it. So you run into that attitude out there, which really isn't fair, but it exists. I put this statistic up here. Most self-published books sell fewer than 300 copies in a lifetime. I researched a lot of third-party research databases, and most of them said 100. I found one that said 300, and I put that one up there to be a little more hopeful. But it's hard because, again, 1.4 million other people are doing the same thing, and you're trying to stand out in the crowd. I can answer one quick question.
Okay. Hold on a second. We're doing the mic because we want to get everything on the recording. Who's got the question? Is there any statistics out there about what percentage or amount of total book sales in the world are sold through self-publishing?
Perhaps, but I don't know what they are. I know that like I said, the average self-published book, 100 books in a lifetime. So I'm not a mathematician. I'm not sure what the statistics are, no, but it's a great question.
I can say real quickly that it's always shifting with the audiobooks and ebooks. Every month I can see different things. One month I'll have half my sales are audiobooks. Next month they're half are print books. Next month it's ebooks. And it's always, as Polly said, it's always shifting.
Yes. She has one more, and then we'll save the rest for the Q&A at the end.
Going back to your previous slide, what happens if you're with a small publisher and then the owners decide to sell their company to another publisher?
Sell it to another publisher.
Either another small independent or even a larger publisher. It's sold. What happens?
I mean, I would suppose it's whatever is written in your contract. It's really important to negotiate a solid contract and to go into it knowing that they might go out of business. So whatever your focus is, I mean, we're all looking at what is our royalty, and if you had your agent, they're going to get their 15%. But with the small press, I would really focus on what happens if you go out of business, and then have that plan written into your contract and have a lawyer look at it before you sign it. My company started because my best friend was with a smaller press, and they made some mistakes, and they were getting ready to go out of business, and she fortunately had done her contract correctly, had worked with an attorney ahead of time, still had to hire an attorney to get her rights back, and they didn't give her files. We ended up together starting Acorn Publishing just for ourselves, and then it's grown into what it is today. But it came from that very situation. It's common. Okay, so we're going to look at what hybrid publishing is. I'm going to do this in general, not going to go too deep, because tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I will be up here talking all about hybrid publishing. How many of you are familiar with hybrid publishing? I'm curious. Pretty good number. It's becoming more and more common as fewer and fewer talented authors are able to find a home with the traditional publishing world. And so what's happening is they're looking at self-publishing, or how do I get help to make sure that this book is coming out quality, something I'm proud of, and something that is going to stand out in the crowd. So we've been doing this for 10 years now. When we started, everywhere we showed up was, oh, well, if you have to pay money, then you must be vanity. And I think we're now at a spot where people are really recognizing that if you find a good hybrid publisher, there's a lot of pros to doing that. So hybrid publishing is a modern concept that is filling an important gap in the publishing industry. It combines elements of traditional publishing and elements of self-publishing. And when it's done well, the idea is that you are getting the best of both worlds. Legitimate hybrid publishers are vetting for quality of your manuscript, and they will ensure that your book has the cover appeal and expertise associated with an established publishing house. So, how does it work? You don't need an agent. Again, your agent's not going to get paid, so even if you have an agent, they're not going to want you to go in this direction, most likely, unless they've exhausted their resources and they're pointing you in the direction of another option. Manuscripts are vetted on the quality of the writing rather than the author's platform. Let's see. If you are accepted, the authors are going to pay upfront fees. Once the manuscript is completed, a release date is selected and the publishing process begins. Each hybrid is a little different. I would say the average you're looking at, Acorn is 8 months. Some of them are more like 1.5 years. But overall, it's a much quicker process because you're not shopping for the agent first. If you submit, you're going to hear back in about 3 weeks, one way or the other. So once your manuscript is completed and the publishing process begins, your book is going to be branded by the hybrid publishing logo, and your work will be promoted and supported by a team of professionals. We're going to look at the pros and the cons. Pros, you are maintaining a lot of control in comparison to traditional publishing. With self-publishing, you're going to have even more control. You are going to be collaborating on the direction of your cover design. Each hybrid's going to work a little different, but they're all going to be taking what you want for your cover design a lot more seriously. The same goes for the formatting. You're going to have input and collaboration on what your formatting looks like. You get to collaborate on the price of your book. And you can change the price of your book, which is extremely important. It's not something we think about ahead of time, but once you get your book out there and you realize how important that control is, for example, most books will have sluggish times, if not just completely go down. When your book starts to slump in sales, if you can, for example, what's really popular right now is dropping your ebook down to 99 cents and doing a big campaign to promote this small limited period of time where your ebook is dropped down to 99 cents, and that can renew interest in your book, especially, they're purchasing it on Amazon. Ooh, I got 5 more minutes, I gotta hurry up. It can boost you in the algorithm. So you can use your pricing in order to pump up sales and renew the life of your book. Let's see. You don't have to pay an agent a percentage of your earnings. You can make updates to your book at any time. When you do a big traditional print run, you could find 5 errors that just eat you up and keep you up at night, and there's nothing you can do about it. With hybrid, you can go back and make those changes if it really matters to you and not have that book with errors out there in the world if it's bothering you. Significantly higher royalties. Most hybrid, you're looking at 70% of your royalties and a lot more of your rights. Each hybrid's going to be a little different. Acorn, you're keeping the majority of your rights, so you're paying a flat fee up front, and then you're making the profits on the back end. Speed, again, it's much faster. There is a team of professionals to publish and help promote your book. And if you find a good hybrid, that team is really working on it. I can tell you when we do the blurb, which is so important for the sale of your book, the author will compose a blurb, and then your personal publishing coordinator is going to edit it, and then she's going to bring it to the team. Most likely it's a she, we're almost all women, and spend an hour crafting it. So every piece of the puzzle is being looked at by a team of professionals and scrutinized and brainstorming. What are the cons? The upfront fees. It's not inexpensive. Acorn charges a flat fee of $11,000. I will tell you, if you went and did all those same things that we offer you, because there's so much marketing included, all the vendors we work with have given us discounts. You'd be paying at least double that. But yes, it's not cheap. The other drawbacks are that lack of control you have as a self-publisher on tracking your sales numbers regularly and getting paid monthly. So those are the main drawbacks. And also, you really do have to be careful with hybrid. There's really, really good ones out there, and there's some that are not. So if you're going to go with a hybrid, you've got to do your research. Look at the quality of their books. I put mine out here so you can look how awesome they are. But that's really important. Go on Amazon, look on the landing pages. What do their landing pages look like? How many reviews do they have? Reach out to some of the authors. How long have they been in business? Do they have repeat authors? Authors that published with them once and then came back and published more books. You look at those things and you're gonna get a really quick idea of who you can trust and who you should be more wary of. So, that's mine.
Briefly, I just want to tell a little story about, because it fits in with what Holly was saying about my Demystifying Publishing. It was a few years later, it dawned on me that I actually have like 42 years of experience in the publishing industry. I was a customer engineer for a computer typesetting company. I did R&D on some of the word processors before PCs. So I had that experience. Then in around 2000, when ebooks started coming, Demystifying Publishing started with some friends from the conference here. And they really wanted to publish me. So they were begging me, can we have some of your books? So I signed all the contracts and all that stuff. They published a novel that I wrote, science fiction novel that I collaborated with a friend of mine. They published a short story collection. They decided to start an ebook conference, and they were ahead of their time. And they put together all the stuff and put the money down, and they did not get the numbers that they wanted. And the hotel was here in Santa Barbara, and they made them pay the bills, which bankrupted them. So they signed all the contracts back to me. Well, I have a memoir that was questionable in terms of the content because of my insane life. And I finally, at that point, I decided, I think I know enough. I'm going to maybe try the self-publishing route. So I called them up, and I said, hey, you guys, what's up with Mystic Ink and all the logos and all the stuff? And they said, it's yours. So I took it over. And now I've been at it, and I have an extensive background in technology, so I've done, well, I'm working on my 21st book, and I did all the stuff on like 18 of them. So I've got it down pretty good. But the reason I'm telling you all that is because what Holly was saying about the small presses and how things shift and change and technology changes and all that. And then, of course, after that, ebooks went crazy. Anyway, enough of that. Let me introduce our next guest. Okay, so I don't know Patricia as well as I know Rick and Holly, but I do know her by reputation, and some of my friends have published with her, and she has a great reputation. So I will say that. She owns Luminaire Press. She started it in 2010 to help authors with the whole publishing process. She's going to give you insight into what you need to focus on, whether you're considering independent publishing. And I like this line here, it's essential to shift thinking, because it's always shifting. Publishing now is chaos. I mean, it's always been chaos, but now it's even more chaos. Some of it good, some of it bad. So she's going to help you figure out how to think like an author and to think like a publisher. She offers a framework that explains where you should put your focus if you want to publish a professional polished book, which includes editing, polishing your manuscript, book design, production, setting up your book for publication and distribution, a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that Holly was talking about. And she's going to break down the process and explain why each step is important. And she's going to give you tools and practical approaches for each step of the process. So she's going to kind of walk you through it. Yeah, so let's give her a hand.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Santa Barbara Writers Conference for having me here. This is only my second year that I've been here, and I really appreciate all of you and the community you have. You just seem to have a lovely community, and I'm really honored to be part of it. So thanks for having me here. I started Luminary Press in 2010 with the goal of helping authors publish professional books. Back then, print on demand and self-publishing were relatively new. And I was seeing a lot of books that were just very poorly produced. They had sort of slapdash covers and the interiors were messy and hard to read. And at that same time, my writer friends were talking about self-publishing as a very viable option. They would say things like, I've just decided to stop looking for an agent and self-publish my book. And they said it like it was going to be a Saturday afternoon craft project. Like, this is going to be the easy path to take. So what my writer friends, and a lot of writers I've talked to since, didn't really realize was that publishing is a very complex task. It's not something you're going to pick up in a weekend or even a couple of months. For most of the 20th century, publishing and writing existed under the same umbrella but in separate spheres. So they were tangential, but they were separate. If you were a writer, you could hand your manuscript over to a team who would polish it up, put a great cover on it, and get it into the hands, get your book into the hands of eager readers. But I suspect most of you are here today because you understand that that's no longer the case. Traditional publishers are very market-driven. They're looking for big names like Prince Harry or Oprah or Stephen King, whose portraits or names on the front of the book are going to sell hundreds of thousands of copies. And because of that, if you, as a talented but relatively unknown writer, maybe you don't have a huge social media platform and things, if you want to publish a book, you are probably going to have to do that work yourself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if there's one message I want you to take away from this, it's that self-publishing or publishing on your own, using a hybrid, whatever way you're getting your book out, it is not a lesser path. It is a very reasonable response to a rapidly changing industry. So independent publishers, well, I will say there are a lot of authors out there who are publishing their books. They're getting decent royalties, they're finding readers, and they're doing very well with publishing. And they understand that there are a lot of advantages to that. You can work, Holly mentioned some of these. You can work on a shortened timeline. You have control over your book production, and you often keep a much greater share of the royalties, if not all of them. So the even better news in 2024 is that even though it says it's self-publishing, you don't have to do everything on your own. There has been a really sort of robust industry that's sprung up around publishing, so you can get great cover design. You will pay for it, but you can get great cover design, you can get great interior formatting, and get your book set up well. So in this seminar, I'm going to outline 3 major areas that I think you, if you're considering self-publishing, need to pay attention to. And I'm going to show you essentially how they all work together to get a good book. This is something I could talk about for hours, if not days, but we don't have that much time. So today I'm going to try and give you sort of a high-level overview along with some suggestions about how you might get these things done. I will be in the weeds, but I'll try and stay not too far in them. So I'm not going to talk specifically about what Luminary Press does today. We're going to have a deeper dive on that tomorrow. But again, if you see me around or you want to talk about anything, just grab me and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, if we don't get to them at the end of this. To start with, I want to talk about what publishing is at its very basic. Publishing is taking your manuscript, creating a book, and making it available for sale. The difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing is who's doing the work to make that happen. Who's going to make that book, who's going to make it available for sale. And if you are independently publishing, it's going to be you. You're going to be taking on the tasks that a publisher does, and you have to really understand what you need to do and how you're going to go about it. So while you're able to work on a shortened timeline, it's not because you're taking shortcuts. It's because you're working on one book instead of many. So I want to talk to you about the publishing framework and how it all comes together. Once the book is written, and I fully acknowledge that that is like the hugest part of this task, but once the book is written, there are three major buckets that your tasks are going to fall into: polish, production or design, and publishing. The polish is the step of paying attention to the content or of the text, and it is the part of the project that includes editing, whether it's content editing or copy editing and proofread and anything in between. The design is the part that focuses on turning your book into a product, and that includes creating a compelling cover and taking your manuscript and creating readable pages. The publishing part focuses on making that product discoverable and available. It's getting your book set up and printed so that readers, both online and bookstores, booksellers, can find your book and buy it. When all three of these work together, I skipped ahead a slide. When all three of these work together, you're just going to get a great book. But if you skip any of the parts, you're going to run into some trouble. So I'm going to show you how they work together. If your book is polished, very well edited, you've gone through that process, you've hired a fantastic cover designer, you have, everything is pulled together as far as the product, but you don't set it up for distribution correctly, readers and booksellers won't be able to find your book. And if they can't find it, they can't buy it. Now, your book will be basically invisible. If you get your book polished and you pay attention to the editing, you get the distribution set up correctly, but you shortchange your cover and design because you think, I can do a cover, or you just are not paying that much attention to it, no one in the book industry is going to take it seriously. And by book industry people, I mean not just buyers, but reviewers, bloggers, people who are looking for books to pay attention to. And it's going to have negligible value to both those people and to the readers. Lastly, if you overlook editing and your book is riddled with grammar errors, illogically constructed, no book professional is going to take it seriously, and you really run the risk of poor reader reviews, which can tank your book. But if you get all three of these right, you're going to have a fantastic book that's ready to find its audience. So now I'm going to break these down one at a time, and I'm going to try and go through it relatively quickly, but we will start with the polishing or the editing. Authors often think of editing as one round of review or something. They'll call me up and say, oh yeah, I think the manuscript needs to be edited. But editing is a really expansive term that covers all sorts of ways to review a manuscript. From, some people use the term to describe developmental or content editing. Some people are talking about editing to review for grammar and punctuation. So it's important to understand what the different stages of editing are and what your manuscript needs. And I want to say and acknowledge that the editing step can be tedious. I know this, I've had things edited, I hate the process. But the more polished and professional your manuscript is, the better it's going to be received by people out there. So even though this is a tedious step and you feel like I've done the work of writing the book, going through the editing process is really a valuable thing. I always said that the editors I worked with saved me from myself, because I'd be in there saying, oh please, I think it's good, I think it's great, let's just put it out there. And they'd be over there going, no, no, no. In the end, it was a better product because it went through that process. So I'm going to run down the types of editing, starting with the big picture stuff. A lot of writers, and maybe a lot of you, have worked informally with groups, in your writing groups and things. As you're going through your manuscript, it's not unusual for a book to go through numerous drafts and to get feedback from writing groups. If you haven't gone through that process, you should consider a developmental or content edit. It is a rare writer, and I mean unicorn rare, that will publish a first draft successfully. So revisions are a widely acknowledged part of the process, and most writers know that. So even though it's painful, revisions are important. After your content or developmental edit, a line edit may or may not be beneficial, depending on what the content or developmental editor has done. A line edit will help with polishing sentences, with organization of content. It might suggest rewriting segments to improve the flow and readability, and it will generally call out issues of concern with the manuscript. A copy edit is the step of looking at the minutia of the text. A copy editor is paying attention to the misplaced comma, to grammar, to spelling, and they will also be looking for things like the consistency with your numbers, how your numbers are spelled out, including your chapter titles, and things like proper nouns. You don't want to have a character named Claire with an E at the beginning and Claire without an E other places in the book. So a copy editor is paying attention to all those things, and it comes after the polishing and rewriting. So you don't copy edit a manuscript that you haven't gone through those other stages of editing with. This is a process that happens towards the end. The copy edited manuscript is the one that's going to go to layout. So when we talk about book layout, we're talking about a copy edited manuscript. It's going to move on to layout. After the layout is done comes the final step, which is a proofread. And I should say, you might go through these steps a few times, but generally, when you move to layout, you want to have the best version of the manuscript you can. A proofreader is going to look at all the things a copy editor did, but they're also going to be checking for general format and layout. They will be looking either at a proof version of the book, an actual printed version, or they can proofread from a PDF. Oh, there's the proofread part. Okay, once you understand what type of editing your manuscript needs, you need to determine how to get that done. We talked about content or developmental editing being done in groups, so you can do that in peer groups, or you can hire a book doctor, a developmental editor. I know there are people here who do things like that. A lot of authors will have beta readers, which is a first reader who can suggest ways to improve the manuscript, anything from character development to plot to flow. For copy editing and line editing, some writers use online tools. Most text programs, including Word, have spelling and grammar checks, and if you don't know about that, go under Tools and turn it on. You don't have to agree with them, but you should be aware of things that a program is calling out. There are other programs, what do I have, Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid. They can help you with spotting the errors. We haven't found them 100% effective, but they are better than nothing. So at a minimum, make sure that your manuscript goes through one of those. This is also a place, I should say, where editor friends can come in handy. So if you have friends who are editors, count yourself among a lucky person in the world and ask them if you can do an exchange or they can help you. But be sure as you're talking to them that you're clear about what kind of editing you're looking at. going back to that, understanding what your manuscript needs. There is nothing worse than giving a manuscript to somebody and you want sort of feedback on the story and things, and they come back and they've marked all the Oxford commas and haven't said anything else. So don't be afraid to say what you're looking for and make sure that they can do that for you. It's probably really helpful if you can, at the copy editing stage in particular, to hire a professional editor. Someone who's not familiar with your manuscript, who can look it over, who can be very, Fresh eyes. Yes, it really, I always think of them as your first intelligent reader who's not like related to you, like the person you're not having Thanksgiving dinner with, okay? So professional editors are very helpful. Good copy editors will call out issues. They won't necessarily suggest remedies, but they're not gonna let you, they're gonna help you in the process of perfecting your manuscript. If you hire a professional editor, remember that the term editor has no formal qualifications. Do not pick somebody up off Craigslist. Okay, this has happened to a friend of mine, and it was not a great experience. You want to make sure that the person you're working with is legit. So I have a few rules for this. Look for an editor who does the type of editing you are looking for. A novel is very different from a technical book. You want to find the person who sort of can match your type of writing. Check their references and their background. So again, don't pick up somebody on Craigslist who said, hey, I was an English major. Make sure they understand the rules of grammar and punctuation and book writing. Ask them for a sample edit. I generally think about 5 pages is enough. They might do more, but if you don't like what you see in the sample edit, talk to them about it. Don't let them do the whole book with things you don't like. So use that sample edit as a way to sort of work out and refine the agreement that you have with them. And lastly, agree on an editing format. You know, when I was coming up, everybody edited in Red Pen, but now most professional editors will use track changes in Word. It's not a great program. I don't like it, but it works. It's sort of the best program we have, but you want to know ahead of time whether they're going to be marking that up in pen, using track changes, and who is going to implement the edits. Lastly, define the editing guidelines. Most novels will use the Chicago Manual of Style as a guide. But if you're doing a technical book or an academic book, there are some other guidelines you might use. Ask your editor, particularly your copy editor, to create a style sheet for your book. A style sheet is a list of rules that are particular to your book. So it includes proper noun spellings, it includes any unusual things you have in your book. But that style sheet is going to be crucial when your book moves on to the proofread. So your proofreader doesn't run across, again, to use the example of Claire, because I've got about 7 of them in my life, and they all spell it with an E at the end. But you want your proofreader to know that Claire is supposed to be spelled with an E at the end. If she runs across it, he or she runs across it without an E. So make sure that you get a copy editor's style sheet. If you're working with an editor who's not familiar with Chicago or creating a style sheet, I would consider that a little bit of a red flag. You might be able to work through it, but just be aware of these things. So I'm going to recap quickly on polishing your manuscript. Determine what type of editing you need, what your particular manuscript needs. What stage is it at? How do you need to move it forward? Determine who will do it. Check their references. Get a sample. Ask them about what conventions they're following to make markups and what review process they will follow. Okay, so normally I stop here for questions, but I think I'm just going to move on, and if you have questions, you can hold them on to the end. So, on to book design. Creating a cover and interior for your book is probably the most exciting part of the process. This is when your writing is going to take shape, and seeing your book take form is really exciting. It's really a great thing to go through. It's when your manuscript is going to become a product that's going to be able to be sold to people. You're not selling your Word document to anybody. You're not emailing that around for people to read. You're making a product that people can use. So to do this, to get the book printed, and again, I want you to remember, you're sort of thinking like publishers now, okay? You are going to need 2 files. You're going to need a cover file and an interior file. Your cover file is printed on heavy stock. You're all familiar with how book covers feel differently. Your inside is usually lighter paper, and it's done in black and white. Both these files have to conform not just to book conventions, but to the standards of the printers. So if you're using print on demand, you have to really understand what they require. And understanding what goes into making the cover and interior and how to go about getting print-ready files is, I think, at the same time, it's like super exciting, but I think it's super confusing for a lot of authors. So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you now. And first, we're going to talk about the cover. At Luminary Press, we do our covers first for various reasons. But a lot of times, clients will come to me and say, oh, we don't need to worry about the cover. I've got an image. I've got a photograph I took or a picture of a friend of mine's art. So the first thing I have to tell you is that that is not a cover. An image is not a cover, okay? You guys know what I'm talking about. You've been through it, okay? So again, we're thinking like publishers, we're thinking print ready. So even if you take that image and you put the book title and the author's name on it, which are sort of the minimum things we expect on a cover, it is still not a cover because it's not something you're going to be able to print. Okay, a cover file looks something like this. It's a long file that's going to wrap around the body of the book. It has, of course, the front, but also the spine and the back. It's printed as one big sheet, and this is what you're more or less going to deliver to the printer. If you're using print on demand, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so even though the cover is more than just the front is the most important part, okay? Because this is how most readers are going to be introduced to your book. And even though we all know we should not judge a book by its cover, we all do. So you want your front cover to be right. Here are some basic principles that I think go into good cover design. Your cover needs to be in line with other covers in its genre. So if you are a genre writer, if you're writing romance, sci-fi, mystery, thrillers, whatever, there's a look to those covers. They have a look and they sort of announce, this is the type of book I am. So you want to study other covers in your genre and see what you see what the conventions are there. Second, your cover has to be readable. And I would think this goes without saying, but it doesn't. So you have to be able to read it. You can't use fancy fonts. You can't use a whole bunch of drop shadows and shadowy things and whatever. I mean, look at all these covers that Holly has up here. You can see what they say from where you are. Most people are going to see your cover this big. So you want to make sure that your title is legible, at least your title is legible. Third, don't try and crowd your whole story onto the cover. I have authors who say to me, well, it takes place in Paris, but then it moves to the Caribbean, so we have to have the Eiffel Tower and palm trees and the detective and the bar and the river. It's too much. It's too much. There are cover designers who can pull that off. I'm not saying there aren't, but you really want to you really want your cover to announce what type of book it is rather than the plot of the book. It just doesn't need to do that. And a corollary is sort of don't use symbolism that a reader won't understand. You know, maybe your coin or the medal are very important, but if the reader doesn't get it, it might not be suitable for the front of your cover. And be discerning about the use of additional text. Don't crowd too much on there. You know, you can have some blurbs, you can have a reading line. In this case, we noted that this book was a novel. because we thought Lisbeth sounded a little bit like a memoir, but you don't have to throw everything on the front cover. Okay, we'll move on to the spine, which is a lot simpler. It generally repeats the text on the cover as far as the book title and the author name. If you have a publisher logo, that should go on the bottom of the spine. If you have room, you could fit a reading line on there. But again, you want it to be clear when it's shelved. So think about books that are shelved in bookstores or on shelves. You want to be able to read that title. The back has a lot of latitude, but it's not an afterthought. The back is really important piece of real estate that you want to make the most of. Be careful with your back cover text. It is not a book synopsis. It is a promise to your reader that this is sort of what you're going to get when you open this book, and it is a piece of marketing material. In my experience, the back cover is the hardest thing for an author to write. I've never had an author come up with a back cover text that works because they're not trained to write marketing material. I will say, much to my dismay, I'm really good at writing back cover text marketing material. I wish I was like a novelist, but I'm not. I'm good at putting things together that can sell things. So I started probably about 5 years ago rewriting back cover text for the authors, because until then I was just kind of trying to coach them, and then I was like, this is not working. So you want a good description of your book. You can also put blurbs on there. You can put blurbs on the front too. A lot of authors will have their author picture and bio. Again, your bio should be written in the third person and keep it sort of germane to what your book is about. But this is not a place, I was going to tell you, you have to have a barcode here too. In this case, we had a publisher imprint, the retail price. I think this cover wasn't quite finished. We had the author website on here. Just remember that anything that goes on the cover should not be an afterthought. You really want to think about your reader. This is work you're doing for your reader and for the sale of your book. When your cover's done, all these surfaces, the front, the back, and the spine, need to work together. And as I said before, they need to meet the specs of the printer. If you're working with a designer, that's their job, to make all that happen, to make all of that work together. So whether you're working with a designer or working on your own, you need to be aware of these things. The printer specs include things like the bleed. You probably can't see that on the slide, but there's some dotted lines here. This is a cover that we have with the guidelines, which won't be on it when we send it. But you have to have the bleed, you have to have the proper spine width, which depends on your final number of pages for the inside, and all of those things have to work together. With that, we will move on to the interior. The care that goes into creating book pages is, for me, the heart of the bookmaking process, because this is the work you're doing on behalf of your reader. So this is why we get to read great books. All of us are probably readers in here. The book pages, it's your work, but the design is done for your reader. So that, of course, means readability, but it also includes an appealing layout, a readable font, appropriate pagination, and guides for the reader. These are all things you want to think about when you're working on the interior. When you upload this file, everything that goes between the covers is in this file. It's all your front and back matter, any bibliography, index, title page, copyright page. Everything goes into your interior layout. So here is, just a rough idea of what a good layout should look like. And I'm showing this as a spread with the spine shadow, which won't be on there when we finally upload it. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I do want to say, I know people who use Word to lay out their books, but it's not a great tool for book design. So look at these two side by side, and you can just see at a glance. The Word layout is obviously very wrong, but you can see at a glance that the one that's done professionally is a lot easier to read and is going to be a more pleasurable experience. There are online programs that you can use that are not Word. I think Atticus and Scribner are two of them. They were at least designed with book pages in mind. So if you're going at it your own, I will also say you can learn Word and you can learn to get a good layout, but it's going to be a really steep uphill battle to get it to look good. Word just doesn't want to handle that stuff well. So a few elements of interior design. I want to point out a few things. In this example, the chapter title and chapter number are different fonts. They're slightly larger, but not just the same font, larger. There's a first paragraph style. In this case, it's a drop cap. It could be a first line style. There are all sorts of ways to do that. The text is justified right. Justified left, justified right. Justified left, thank you. So it's even on both sides.
It's called justified.
Justified. The text is justified. Thank you. Thank you. It's okay. It's not ragged, either way. But that is important. There's no space between the paragraphs. The indent is smaller than your standard tab in Word. So the tab that they give you in Word is pretty large. I think it's half an inch or so. After a scene, this is a scene break symbol, you have a different line style, or at least you don't have an indent for the paragraph. In this case, you want to pay attention to pagination. The right side of the page is always the odd number. Word doesn't want to let you do this. Word wants this to be page 1 and this to be page 2. The printer won't accept that. The printer will not take books that are not paginated correctly. I know when I worked on a school project for some kids who didn't know what they were doing, and I just didn't catch it, but it got rejected by the printer and we had to go back and redo it. So you want to make sure that the pagination is correct, and if you have blank pages, you generally don't have a page number or a footer or header on it. So those are all things to think about with the layout. Lastly, I do want to note that we often show layouts in spreads. We show them to our authors in spreads and things, but when you upload that file, it's a single page that's printed front and back. So it's a PDF, it's page, 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 not the spread, and certainly not the spine shadow. Okay, so how you get these two files is an excellent place to hire experts. If you absolutely can't do that, you have some options. The printers, both KDP and Ingram Spark, have print templates that you can download. They're not design templates, they're print templates, which will have all the marks and bleeds and things like that on them. There are other places that have online templates, but just be careful that you're not using something that a lot of other people have used, because they tend to be a little less designy, and you don't want to run that risk. You can always hire a designer. There are people who will do a la carte covers, but again, find somebody who is familiar with book covers. A fine arts major does not necessarily know anything about book design, so you want to work with somebody who knows the conventions of book covers. For the interior, it might be a little easier to go it on your own. I mentioned that there are some online programs, Vellum, Scribner, and Atticus. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm on it. But most professional designers will use InDesign, which is really the gold standard of book design. Okay, I'm going to skip the recap because I did that, and I really want to move to the publishing part, because I've saved the best stuff for last. This is the step that most people think of when they say that you should be able to publish for free. I hear people all online saying, we should be able to publish for free. And in this sense, they're right. It doesn't cost anything to upload your files and create a book through KDP. Ingram Spark, I think, charges $12 a year, so it's a very nominal fee. So the publishing part is free, but it does not mean that it happens at the push of a button. Okay, in addition to creating and uploading in the proper format, you have to set up the correct distribution options. You have to understand how ISBNs work. You'll need to set a retail price and set up the appropriate sales discounts. So in the United States, there are two common print-on-demand avenues, Kindle Direct Publishing and Ingram Spark. These are what most people who are self-publishing are going to use. They do print-on-demand books, which are printed when they are sold. So Kindle, we use both of them. We use Kindle for retail direct through Amazon, and we use Ingram Spark for wide distribution to everybody else. If you are selling a book through these channels, you need to have an ISBN, which is an International Standard Book Number. There are ways you can get ISBNs. Kindle and I think I can't get my next slide to come up. Free. There you go. You can get a free one through KDP or I think Ingram Spark. I really don't recommend that because it limits your distribution options. You can purchase your own through Bowker's Books in Print. I think it's $125 for one and $295 for 10. If you do this, you're setting up your own imprint. Or you can work with a hybrid publisher, a publisher like Luminary Press. If we provide an ISBN, it is most definitely not a free ISBN. So don't let people tell you that you have to have your own ISBNs. If you're working with a reputable publisher and they provide the ISBN, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to talk about book pricing quickly. $20. If you have a book that retails, you're going to pay a sales discount to a third party, 40 to 55%. From that, this is for print-on-demand pricing, your printing costs will be deducted, and what remains is your royalty. So you can see there are some variables on what your royalty is going to be. KDP and Ingram both have great royalty and print calculators that you can use. The sales discount, I don't know. This is like so much. I think I might just skip this. I was going to make a joke about saving this boring part to last, but it really is a lot to understand. I will just say, if you go with Ingram Spark, you should set your discount at 55%. KDP, you don't have a choice. It's going to be 40%. Don't be tempted to set it lower so you make more royalties, because bookstores and other online booksellers are not going to be interested in carrying your book. So I'll skip all the boring explanation and tell you that. Here's a publishing wrap-up, and I will conclude since it's my time to go. Before I do, I want to mention one thing. You will notice that I haven't talked specifically about book marketing in this presentation. If you're an author, your ongoing life, if you are self-publishing, your ongoing life is going to be book marketing. Everything I've talked about here is mostly one and done, but this is the foundation of a good book marketing plan. If you don't have a good professional book to sell, it's going to be an uphill battle, and any time and money you spend on trying to sell your book is really going to be mostly wasted. So that's my pitch for marketing. If all three of these work together, you're going to have a beautiful book. I have a newsletter sign up in the back. There's a QR code you can take a picture of. If you sign up for our newsletter, we will send you a free self-publishing checklist and some deals for Santa Barbara writer attendees. But thank you for having me.
Patricia did a good job of pointing out how important formatting is, and covers, and design, because anybody with any experience can tell pretty much instantly by looking at the book, both the inside and out, that it's done by a rookie. And it doesn't look professional, and you won't get sales, and you won't get distribution. So it really is important what she said about formatting and inner and outer covers and all that stuff. Okay. So, Rick's another one of my children. I have many children within the conference. And Rick's been with me about 12 years now in my workshop. So it's really great to see people coming along and growing. Rick is recently retired technologist and a data scientist. He's now writing full-time. He now has 2 novels he's self-published. In addition to writing and editing and designing and mastering all the arts of publication platform that we've been discussing here, he's marketing and making public appearances and promoting his books. He exemplifies the successful do-it-all-yourself published author, which we mentioned. He's also here consulting during the week of the conference to help writers decide if they do want to self-publish or not, if it's their best option or not, and if so, what do you need to do to make it happen? So he's going to clarify whether maybe you want to self-publish or not, because I'm going to tell you, I do all of it, and it's non-stop. All those details that other people can hire out and have people do, I do all of it. Some days it's non-stop, some days I hate it. But I'm in full creative control. And I do ebooks and tree books and audiobooks. I got the whole thing, I got a process down, and I can't tell you the gratification of being fully in charge and really making it happen. But it ain't easy, folks. But Rick's gonna tell you. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you, Brother Matt. All right, before I do anything else, because I've been in front of the classroom as a professor, I know that the attention span goes to about 35 or 40 minutes, and then the glutes get numb, and everybody's mind goes someplace else. So everybody stand up, and I want you to twist, and I want you to do this. I want you to return the blood flow to your glutes so the brain doesn't go numb. Thank you. Okay. We're all awake. I don't want to hear any snoring. Thank you very much. Oh, look. They want me to join the network again. Go away. All right. Grace and I have had a couple of running conversations. This whole thing happens because no good deed goes unpunished. Last year I got asked to do DIY Q&A, do-it-yourself, self-publishing paths. And then this year I got asked, and it was an additive process. Hey Rick, you'll do the Q&A table again, yeah? Sure, I can do that again. We're thinking about doing a publishing spectrum seminar. Would you like to do? Sure, I can do that. Okay. Well, we think that folks might want to do a deep dive and do a Q&A. So maybe the morning after you do. Okay, sure, do that. And there's two more that I'm doing after all of that. Who am I? After about 30 plus years of running IT and higher ed, well, going back a little further than that, I started writing, well, my first trip here was in '05, up at Westmont.
Were you at Westmont?
I was at Westmont, and I was at John Reed's very first pirate workshop. I had a German idea of a story that wouldn't go away. And I went to the one-day workshop at the Schott Center, and I got beaten to death with a pamphlet by Marla Miller. You have to go to this writer's conference. Okay. Because she asked me a question. She says, what are you writing? I said, well, I was writing this sci-fi, apocalyptic piece. And how far you gotten? Oh, I got about 100 pages. Good start. Manuscript format? I said, what's that? And she said, well, and this is back before, it's just this inch all around, monospaced font, double-spaced. No, I know, single-spaced Times Roman. That's when I got beaten to death with a pamphlet. I said, you have to come to this conference. And this community has been transformative for me. And I am a true believer in giving back, which is why I'm here. I got asked to do what amounts to what was my path. How did I get to this point and why? In '05, I sat and listened to, this is how we do, well, we got that, we'll go there. I sat and listened to the traditional path. I was told you write a query letter, you talk to agents, you get an agent, you get a shop, you follow that path. I followed that path. I wrote nice query letters. I sent out about 25 or 30 query letters. I got what I thought was a good return back. I got about 8 or 9 responses. Out of those 8 or 9 responses, I got 4 requests for pages. Out of those 4 requests for pages, I got 2 requests for the full book, for my first book. And then I got, thank you, but we can't place it. And I'm a new writer, and I know that these things are iterative, and you need to continue to work on your craft. And I came back to the conference, and I met the resident weirdo. And we'll go there later, the writer god. And I continued to work on my craft, and life intruded, because life intrudes. And jobs changes, and divorces happen, and kids come along. And in the meantime, I'm following the industry, and I'm watching the industry evolve. And between 05 and 07 and 08, you get the early advents of print on demand, and you start seeing the espresso machines showing up in some of the independent bookstores. And you get the advent of Amazon finally coming around to doing physical books in addition to Kindle. And I started teaching myself, because I had an hour's commute each way to work. So I started listening to podcasts. And if you're not listening to writing excuses, you're not learning how on craft. It's going into its 20th season as a podcast, and it is a phenomenal resource. I throw some credits up here for the things that I've gotten into. The Dead Robot Society is another opportunity where you have a writer that's gone the trad pub route and a writer that's gone the indie pub route, and exclusively with Amazon. And they talk both about the business and craft. And for anybody who's interested in these, I am fully transparent. There will be a link. You can download a PDF. It's all yours. Please. I got introduced to Michael Anderley's YouTube channel and the 20 books to 50K theories. And those go along the marketing theories of the long tail. You produce a large inventory and backlist, and they eventually fill out, and you start selling more books, and people get more interested into your stuff. Craig Martell worked with Michael Anderley. He actually started a conference, 20 books to 50K. It happens in Vegas each year, and it is about the business of indie publishing. What really happened during this entire cycle, though, is I know me. I know what I write, and I know the market for it. And I know that the 2 or 3 traditional imprints that are out there, and I include Bain and Tor in traditional imprints now because they've been around long enough. There's 3 of them. There's Bain, there's Tor, and there's Rock. All of them will take submissions without representation, but your chances of getting in the door are about the same as getting in with Simon Schuster, because they've already booked their year out, and you really got to wow them to get in the door. And that's not my market. I write page-turner adventure, good entertainment, but I'm not going to be Hugh Howey, and I'm not going to sell to Apple TV, and I'm not going to have these long series. But I wanted to get my stuff out there. And I've had the good luck of getting some very good feedback that folks like what I'm writing. And I find that gratifying. Going this route, make no mistake, you are now a small business owner. And you are wearing many hats. In addition to being the creative and the author, you are also your original editor. You're also at least the coordinator for the creative side of it. And that's the cover design, and that's the layout, and that's all of the other stuff that goes with it. You're also your financials. You're also marketing and social media, and you're evangelist. You're a project manager. You've got to keep all those things moving and all those things in the air. I'm fortunate in that my professional background, I had touches in a lot of those things. I have that particular skill set, so it didn't intimidate me. Many of those things that are there, both Holly and Patricia very articulately said, are services out there that you can find. falls under the category of caveat emptor. Buyer beware. Vet your vendors, look at what they're doing, look at who they're doing it for, and is it a quality of work that you want to invest your money or your reputation in? As far as my process and how I work, I fell in love with Scrivener when it first came out in 06, 07. I go back to version 1.5. But Scrivener purports to be an ebook out. Not really. I distill out, I go to Word, I do my final copy edit through Word. This is why I like Scrivener, because I am a non-linear writer. I'll be working on a scene, I'll go, oh, I need this scene. And I'll write that scene and I'll stick it over there. But with this particular, this is the old index card on the cork board where I can go, I can take this push pin and I can move it over here. And I can take this scene and I can put it up over here. And no, I don't want this scene here, I want it over here. And I can color code it so that I know I've got my old timeline that starts in 1908. This is actually one of my published novels. This is The Tunguska Deception, which runs effectively 3 timelines, an A and a B and an A minus that comes from that one. And that's why you've got 3 colors up here. And this saves my sanity. I can't tell you how many times. There are alternatives to other platforms. Atticus is multi-platform. It's a browser-based interface. It also allows you to do composition direct into the interface. There's also Canva, there's Google Docs, Final Draft if you're doing screenplays. Pages is Mac only. Scrivener is multi-platform now, Mac and Windows. The Windows version is still a little light in my opinion. And of course, Word 0365, as far as you're doing words and doing grammar check and other things, it's okay for that. If you're a plotter versus a plantser versus a pantser, because it's a continuum, there are tools out there for doing that as well. I am a notorious pantser. I am a firm believer in turning your characters loose and writing up the incident report. I will be writing along, I can't tell you how many times on the book I'm working on right now, I'll be writing along and I'll walk in the door and go, honey, I did this, and they wanted to do that. And I went, okay, and I ran with it. And my subconscious knew better than what I thought I wanted to do with the story in almost every case. Scrivener has an outlining capability. There are other platforms that have outlining capabilities. There is a browser-based tool called Plotter, P-L-O-T-T-R, or is it T-R-R? I think it's T-R-R.
TTR.
Is it T-T-R? Thank you. That is, again, a drag and drop organizational tool. And some folks find it very useful. It comes with a series of templates, including things like Save the Cat and Campbell's The Hero's Journey and others. It's a very useful tool for some folks. Grammar and editing. I have played with all of these in various tools. I use primarily, and they disagree with each other, they argue with each other. ProWriting Aid and Grammarly. You want a comma here? Oh, no, you don't. Well, yes, you do. Well, no, you don't. And then Word will say, no, we really want it over here. You get to be the arbiter of those arguments. Exactly, yeah. I'm sorry, there's a comma there because I want to pause because I want my reader to think about it. Okay. Pseudo-Write is an AI tool. It's a subscription service. I use it specifically for getting stuck in a phrase or a thought. And I know there's something better out there, and I want it to give me a couple or three alternatives because I'm stuck. And I don't want to spend 3 days trying to figure out how to get around the way this sentence is constructed. So I'll drop it into the AI, I'll say, give me 3 or 5 options. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. And then I run from there. That's where I think AI tools are going to be the most useful. ProWriting Aid and Grammarly are also implementing AI-assisted work as well. Layout and design, I'm a fan of Vellum. I've been using it for years. I find InDesign to be excessively complex. Having been a desktop publisher and a designer in past lives, I think Vellum is the simplest interface out there. It's Mac only, so if you're Windows folks, you're going to want to use Atticus. Atticus is a fully useful tool. I won't take anything away from it. I just prefer this particular interface. Like I said, other alternatives. Something I threw out here that not a lot of people know about. If you don't want to pay Adobe its pound of flesh for Photoshop, there is a browser-based version called PhotoP that is a free tool that exports into the Photoshop format and all of the other standard formats, has the majority of the same filters. It's a very useful tool. The graphics faculty at the college I used to work at tell their students, if you can't afford Adobe, you can go here, and it'll get you where you need to be. So I share that as well. Cover design. Yeah, that's one of my abortive attempts. I liked the drop cap. I thought it was dramatic. Or the drop shadow. I liked it anyway. I'm going to bounce through a couple of these really quickly because I want to get to the point of understanding your genre and the expectations of your genre. And I've got a very clear demonstration of this, if you'll stick with me. I liked the blue. It's a space-based pathogen. It's cold, it's icy, it comes from the moon, Europa, out anyway. I liked it. If you're writing post-apocalyptic fiction, you're expected to have somebody and a dystopian landscape and some other things on the cover. It's just there. Go through the genre, look at the covers, they're all there. When you're doing adventure, you can get a little more adventuresome, if you will. I've got the top secret cover, I've got the file, I've got some other things there. My first one, however, and I should have known better with this one of my past roles at the last couple of institutions I worked at was ADA gatekeeper. I vetted applications before the college or the university licensed them to produce ADA compliant content. That gray cover is not ADA compliant because folks with red color blindness see gray on gray and they can't read it. So here's my demonstration on this. Guess when I changed my covers? January 27th, I changed both covers. And I moved 60 plus volumes, and that's just units. That's not KDP reads also. In 2 months, dramatic response. Know your genre, know what your genre is expecting, and you'll save yourself that particular toe stub. Going through the process of category, know the categories that you're publishing to. Know the keywords that the search engines are going to pick up. There are tools out there that will help you identify these. The same guy that does Atticus does a tool called Kindle. Oh, I just lost it. Is it on the next screen? It's not. Kindlepreneur. And it pulls based upon your genre and what's out there, and it does a good job of giving you a starting point to identify. Proofs. Get proofs. Buy the proof and have them ship it to you, and go through it page by page by page. I know it sounds tedious, but here's why. This is a sample cover of my book that will be coming out soon. Okay? It's not fitting the template, and I put it up here just for that reason. You've got your bleed lines, you've got your cut lines. Look at the spine, that's not right. Work through this, use the guides. I've gone exclusively with KDP, largely as an initial experiment, largely for simplification for my own self, because I have other things that keep me busy. Do the same thing with the interior and go page by page by page. Okay, I've got two errors here. These happen because you're going from one application to the next. Okay, I went from Scrivener to Word to Vellum. That triple break there happened because there were 3 return marks as a space break between the scenes. And I looked at my original manuscript and there was a quotation mark there, and it just didn't end up somehow or another coming through the translation. Go page by page by page and go through your stuff. This didn't happen. I didn't really send the letter. You have options. I've chosen to go exclusive with that, with Kindle. Again, for the simplification, because I do other things. I'm also a technology consultant. I have clients who have demands on my time. I don't do this full time, so I didn't want to have to deal with Ingram and that and this and whose royalty is where and what dashboard I'm playing with. But there are a number of services out there that you can go through. Why did I choose to go self-publishing? As I said, I know myself. I know some of the business side of this. I know that I want to retain my rights and all of my rights and the audio rights, and should I get lucky enough to be acquired, potentially screen rights. It's about money. Self-fulfillment, which is becoming one of the bigger things in the indie world now, is about money, pure and simple. If you are trusting exclusive to one platform, you don't have access to the data, and you don't have access to your readers. I don't know who bought my book, and I can't reach out and build a relationship with them to make sure they know the next book's coming. That's why a lot of the folks with a deeper, what's the word I want, deeper library, backlist, that's the word I was looking for, are moving away from exclusive from one platform or another and doing self-fulfillment. But there are components to that that you need to be aware of. Not that I'm getting cotton mouth because I've been talking too much. Services like BookFunnel allow you to deliver your ebooks to your readers directly. So if you build the hooks between something like Squarespace or some of the other online retailers to trigger an automatic sale, they have the connective tissues between the vendors. So you can self-fulfill your ebooks without having to deal with Ingram or with Amazon, and then you know who bought your book. And you can start building those relationships with those readers. The other thing that BookFunnel does is if you're building your newsletter list, they have a service for building those relationships with other folks who are building their lists, and they do promos. And if you've got a small reader magnet piece to start as a freebie, if you will, for joining your list, you can join these promos, and my email list tripled in the space of a month. I simply included a short story in the universe that I'm writing in, and when folks subscribed to my list, they got the short story. And out of the 100 and some odd folks that joined my list in less than 30 days, I've lost 2 cents. So they seem to stick around. It's a good thing. Something to experiment with if you're trying to build that communication pattern with your readers. My own personal collection of resources. This is my front page. Yes, I did do an update today. On the right-hand side, down below the fold, if you will, if you're an old newspaper person, I have a list of links of things that feed my writer brain or have fed my business sense and what I've learned to educate myself with. They're all there. Help yourself. That's why they're there. 2F Books. 2F Books came to be because I already had an LLC, because I'm a technology consultant, amongst other things. And Flattened Flamingo LLC is my LLC, and that runs out of having won a worst first sentence contest that involved a flattened lawn flamingo. So 2F Tech is my technology consultancy, and 2F Books is the imprint. I chose to do a DBA in my own imprint because I didn't want my cover saying Books by Rick. Having things go through my LLC, there are obviously tax implications. There are taxes associated with it that can be managed. There are liability and separation components that keep it away from family finances should there be an issue. It served my needs. It's not an essential for anybody to do, it just served my needs, but that's where it came from. I also volunteer at the Veterans Center, the last institution I worked at. And I work with vets and a lot of folks who are dealing with PTSD. Their therapy cycles are writing to allow them to work through and process a lot of that stuff. And I have sat down with a number of writers and offered to help them get their stories out there if they want to go down that route. Here's me putting back on my geek hat because I have a captive audience. Okay? If you are online, use two-factor authentication. I know it creates an additional step. I know that is a problem or an added level of complexity. But without two-factor authentication, you are leaving yourself open to having folks access to your stuff. Back up to the cloud. Find a cloud provider that you're comfortable with, whether it's Google Drive or O365's OneDrive or Box or Dropbox, and move your content to the cloud. There are 3 facts of computing. Floppy drives fail, thumb drives fail, hard drives fail, and stuff happens. And if you're not backing up, I use the little ditty, if you're not too deep in backup, you're not deep enough. You want 2 copies of everything that's important to you because drives and computers fail. There's my PSA. Password safes are becoming more and more popular because when you sign up for them, every place you use it, you have a different password. It provides you a different complex password. If you're using an 8-character password, it can be brute forced in a matter of hours. If you're using a 12-character password, you're now looking at a series of years. Longer complexity, mixed case. I do this because I can't tell you how many friends who have called me and said, I've been hacked. My Facebook account's been hacked. My Twitter account's been hacked. Somebody got into my online system and got access to my stories. Take the step to secure your data, folks, please. And I promised I wouldn't use all 40 minutes. Okay.
So last, just little piece of advice. What Rick said about the backups were really important. I've got like 5 different email accounts. I drive people crazy. But when I finish a manuscript to a book that's ready, and if I want to do a really quick backup, I just email them all to myself, to all my other accounts. And they're there. The other thing I often do, it used to be I'd stop somewhere in the middle of the road. I got an idea, and I'd write it down, right? Well, now I just email myself the idea, or ideas. And then they come to my computer, and I can cut and paste them into my manuscript and start working with them and all that. So but the backup is very, very critical. And Rick and I really get it, because we're both IT guys.
I spent 30 years running IT in higher ed and publishing, and I lost track of the number of times I've gotten a phone call in the middle of the night from a faculty member who lost the only copy of their master's thesis because they dropped the thumb drive in a toilet or something similar. It just happens. If you are not too deep in backup of everything that's important to you, you don't have enough of it.
Yeah. So we're going to have questions. We've got our beautiful Penny the mic runner. And if your question is specifically for one of us up here, then say please, or otherwise we can just tag team a bit and make it happen. So there's a lady right here with a hand.
This is a teeny tiny question. I was just curious about Canva. I never even heard about Canva being used to basically create the guts of a book.
Canva has a word editor, word processor. It's got a spreadsheet capability. It's a web-based suite. It has a graphics production.
I just never heard about it being used for a book.
I've seen it used for cover work and other things. You just need to find the right template. Part of the problem with going up to Amazon or Ingram or others, they all have slightly different dimensions, so you have to be able to work around that.
Okay. I wouldn't use Canva for the guts of your book. Don't use Canva? I wouldn't use it.
Well, not for layout for the interior, no, but certainly for the cover.
So go ahead and use Vellum instead?
Yeah, I would use Vellum or Atticus.
Yeah, another little hint I can throw in before another question. As things have evolved, for me, I go through all the revisions and I do the layout. But now, my second to last proofing was when I read the audiobook. Because back in the day, they used to always say you should read your work out loud, and I did it for a while, and then of course I got lazy. And then of course I had more typos and more errors. But when you do the final layout, as Rick kind of touched on, weird things pop up. Spacing, there's this thing called widows and orphans where there's a sentence hanging out weird, all those things, and you'll catch them when you're reading. Even though you've looked at it 1,000,000 times, you'll catch them.
Rivers through the text. White space rivers through the text. When you justified block, it's spreading things out. Then you have to go through and make sure you hyphenate properly to collapse those.
Yeah. Yeah, and the extra carriage returns you didn't realize were in there will do weird stuff. I also highly recommend when you do like KDP, you can do electronic proofing, and you may think you got it all, but you should get the print proof copy. And I'm also lucky enough to have a proofer, so we both get one, and then we really catch it. So I just want to mention that. More questions?
Hi. This is for Rick, actually. I published my first book, a memoir, in 2006, and I had and I published it as a self-publishing, and I had a coach that really went through great things. I had an interior, exterior, design. Everything was fantastic. It was really good. And so anyway, it was on Amazon. It is on Amazon, and. Throughout the years, like you said, a lot of things changed. In the beginning, I did really well with it. I had some radio talk about it, and I did the publicity, and it did well. And then I just left it. And now what I realized, so at that time, they did they printed the book, and I received the book, because I was the publisher, yeah? And so I had the copies of the book, and I used to send it to Amazon every time they needed more copies. So with the time, I just left it, and they didn't ask for more copies, and I was busy with something else. And now I'm looking at the book. They are, if you order it, somebody else will ship it, not Amazon, because they, whatever they did with it. And now I wanted to go to my account with Kindle account, and I don't have the code that I uploaded, and I don't think I uploaded. Maybe my coach, actually, my book coach uploaded. So I don't have the code, and I can't get to the account to make changes as far as price, or maybe I want to be the seller, instead of someone else selling it.
Part of that's going to go to the owner of the account, and the owner of account having access to the property within the account.
So I'm the owner.
And
I thought so.
who created the account? As far as Amazon's concerned, whoever created the
Right.
account is the owner of the account.
So that's what I'm trying to find out. I think either my book coach did it, or I did it, which is I don't have the code
And I know they have a
or
customer
the
service
password,
line that can be called.
and I have no way to get into the account.
I know they have a customer service line that you can contact them as well.
I did, so they transfer me to different, departments, and I'm just at lost. That's where
I have a client who had a similar problem, and I puzzled over it for a while, and just the other day I came up with the solution.
okay, great.
The solution, which will work, is you get a new ISBN number, and you start a new account, and do it like as a revised edition or
over again.
updated version, and start all over again.
All
Because
over
once you
again.
lose, she drove me nuts because she lost her password and she couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I said, I can't help you.
I thought about that because when I bought, ISBN, I bought like maybe 10 of them. So I have a new one, I can have a new one, and just like upload the whole new book, so
Yeah.
to speak, and just
Start over again.
And forget that, and
Yeah.
just leave it there.
Yeah.
You might
Okay.
refresh the cover.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
And
Why
I
not
love
while you're
the
at it?
cover,
Maybe
it's all
there's a
good.
second edition, refresh the cover.
Second edition, I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Sure, in football, that's called drop back and punt. Somebody else? Gentleman over here.
Yeah, for Patricia, it sounds like if you're doing self-publishing, you have a choice of soft cover and that's it.
Oh, no,
Not anymore.
I did not cover that. You can do print on demand. So let's talk about the printing part of it. You can print a hardcover or you can print a soft cover. You can do both, along with an ebook. That's what we do a lot. I will say the economics for hardcover books with print on demand are not as good. So you can do it. Some authors like to. They want, they just want to be able to buy copies for themselves or whatever. But you're not, even though the book price is higher, you're not going to make a significantly higher royalty because print on demand with hardcover it just costs a lot more.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, but you can do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The hardcover through KDP, I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, they're crap. I'm sorry, they're crap.
He just meant paperback.
I've got a question in that same vein exactly. If you go with KDP and you wanted a hardcover, could you get, I understand they don't have jackets for them. Are those
Correct.
Ingram Sparks books, Holly, that you have there?
For the hardcovers, yes.
And so if you're already signed up with KDP, can you
Mhm.
get into Ingram Sparks as well and get something?
Yes.
As long as you're not exclusive and going into Kindle Unlimited,
Yeah,
you can go to both platforms.
yeah, good job, Rick.
Yeah, and you can distribute your book. This was the part that I sort of had to cut short. You can
Yes.
distribute your book through both KDP and Ingram Spark with the same ISBN. You have to set it up correctly, though, in order to do that. So you can use KDP to distribute through Ingram Spark, but you shouldn't because it adds an unnecessary layer of cost to your book. So you set it up first with there's disagreements about this, as there are about everything we have talked about in this room. We set ours up first with KDP. We don't click the expanded distribution. Then we move over to Ingram for the hardcover and the wide distribution for the paperback.
I would also add, because things are constantly changing in the industry, right now,
Yes.
and this could change tomorrow, and it wasn't this way in the past, but right now, KDP is making the Ingram Spark hardcovers very difficult. Now that they
That's what I
offer
heard.
their own hardcover, they
Yeah.
suddenly are not populating the image for the hardcover via Ingram Spark. They're not carrying as much in stock. We're right now at a place where doing your hardcover on your release date via Ingram Spark is likely to cause you problems, and it would be beneficial to actually do your hardcover maybe 3 months after your release date and offer it as a special edition. It's the perfect example of how things turn on a dime.
I mean, because I also learned that you can't have KDP won't put a cover like yours have.
They will not.
And that's not, it's not a book, a hardcover, unless it's got that little dust jacket on it.
Right, it is a inferior product,
Exactly.
and people aren't using it, and so now all of a sudden, they have seemed to find a workaround to punish you for using the
That's right.
superior product. Yes.
So can either of you pull me out of my problem? If I could contact you after this seminar?
Yes, and I can
Sure.
I'm happy to talk to you more about it, but I will tell you that right now, I believe the best way to do it is if you want a hardcover, to do it through Ingram Spark, and
Okay,
to
do
release it
that.
about 3 months after your release date so that it does not cause you issues on your release date. It can still cause you problems, but at least it's not happening on your release date and mucking that up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I'll like to add a little something before the next question. I'm old school, and I've been in this stuff for a long time, so I do everything on Word. And once I get the print version ready, I do a save as another file, and with a few minor tweaks, the ebook's ready to go, because all the layout's been done. I may change some spacing, it might be just another couple of hours of work, but then it can go out on the KDP as an ebook. Now, there's another organization called Smashwords, which I used to work with. They drove me nuts with their formatting. Oh my God. But then there's another one called Draft to Digital, D2D, and they have merged. And I have to say the Draft to Digital is eons better. Yeah, they're doing POD now too. But the great thing about the Draft to Digital is they have like maybe a dozen or more other distributors, like Kobo. So those ones, though you may not know much about them here, they're popular in other countries. Like I got nice followings in Australia. I got some in England. I got some in Spain. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they have those distributors that they can go to that KDP may or may not. And once you have it formatted in that way, then it's kind of a no-brainer to upload it and keep going with that. So I just wanted to mention that. Who had the next question? Somebody did. There's two over here.
I was the next question.
You are now?
I was not the next.
Oh, well, you can be the next.
It's a subsequent question.
You can be subsequent. I like that. Subsequent. That's 3. Yeah.
Hi, just to go back to cover design, just for fun. Somebody mentioned Canva earlier on. You know how romance books, you always see the people's faces full on, and in historical fiction, they're kind of turning away, or the silhouette. And so back to what Rick was saying about each genre, and there is, or at least there used to be, a particular format that gave you, it was very obvious that this was Cowboys and Aliens, or whatever it was. Now, what I've seen more and more, especially in the bestsellers rankings, is it's just the title of the book and the name of the author, and that's it. So there's no real, because I don't know about everyone else in the room, but I really wanted to create a whole mosaic and explain the whole book in picture format on the front cover and make it really complicated like a jigsaw puzzle, because there's this as well. And exactly, no, luckily I was warned off from that. But if you look at like Percival Everett, like James, all it says is James on the front cover in gold. It looks great. But so when people come to you and ask you, I don't know what to do, I've managed to write a whole book, but I don't know how to do a cover. What advice do you normally give them? And I mean, Rick, you spoke about this, but I don't know if you offer advice on cover design to people?
Again, I've got a graphic design background, so I've done some of that stuff myself. There are services out there, Fiverr, Readly, 2 or 3 others, where those talents display their work, and you can review their work and perhaps contract with them. There are others out there who are cover designers and put them out for sale direct, and you can work with them. Part of the problem with using those is you may get a screenshot for the digital book, but you don't get the full layout for the physical book. And if you need to make alterations to that because your page count doesn't fit their design, you've got added costs there. So again, it falls under caveat emptor, buyer beware. Talk to the artists, find out what services you're getting for what you're buying, and go through and look at their body of work, and does their body of work fit what you're looking for and or fit the genre you want to publish in? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I really appreciate how all of you have said about the importance of getting your files back, particularly from Fiverr. Is you've got to get that design, you've got to own it. But I think what I'm sorry I was rambling. What I'm interested in is if someone said to you, I've seen all these bestsellers where it is just a blank canvas on the front cover, it's just the name of the book and the author. What would you suggest? You haven't seen that as much as I have. Okay.
I've seen a little bit of it, but again, you're probably looking at somebody like James Patterson, or a real name, and you're getting just I've seen a couple of them, but no, not really. You're still looking for the imagery that fits the genre.
Yeah, well, that's the point I wanted to add to that. Traditionally in publishing, they go for a look. Certain genres, Rick mentioned this, certain genres have a certain look, certain books have a certain look. When you get to be Stephen King, half the time people don't give a shit what the name of the book is, it's Stephen King. Then you will see Stephen King, because that's what they want to get your attention. And traditionally speaking, in bookstores, I mean, it's the same online, but traditionally in bookstores, they're looking for what's going to grab your attention to go to the cover, and it's going to fit genres. So there's a look to a Harlequin romance. There's a look to science fiction. They have a specific look that they do, and that also helps them to categorize the books when they're putting them up on the shelves. This is nonfiction, you know, that's novel, all of that. So that's really important. The other little twist in the formula that's happening these days, and these guys touched on it really good, is you have to pay attention to the fact that maybe a lot of people are just going to see the thumbnail of the book. So you got to really be conscious of those two things, because you want to get the attention. And of course, there's 6 gazillion books out there all competing with you. So you want to do something that's giving a sense of what the story is and what kind of the genre it is. And it goes back to that whole old school world of traditional publishing. So those are things to really consider.
I want to give props. I think it was Patricia who said it. You judge a book by its cover. You do, and the reality is the cover will get you the click and the blurb will get you the buy. Flat out. If I have fit the expectations of post-apocalyptic fiction and I've got Dad and the boy walking through the disaster, they're going to go, oh, that's interesting, and click. And then they're going to read my blurb and discover what it is. And if they're game, they might read the sample. And then they'll buy the ebook.
Yeah, you want to add to that, Patricia?
I wanted to say one more thing. I haven't seen covers like that with just the title and the name. I usually see them with images. But the conventions for covers change. Yeah. So you might say, oh, well, this is the look of that a romance book looks like, and 10 years from now, that might not be the case anymore. Yeah. Right. So this is why people will redo their covers. They'll put new covers on their books. But you really need to pay attention to what's current. It's always fascinating, because I can't get rid of a book to save my life. To go back to my bookshelves and look at old covers, and it's like, oh, well, that just would not fly today. But so the genres can change, the styles can change. That might be a style that's coming that we just aren't aware of. But that's what you're paying attention to. That's what you want to look for.
I think that's a really good point, though, is because we should all be aware that we can change our covers as often as we want.
You bet.
Yeah.
VOD, baby.
Because I didn't
like
realize that
fashion.
originally.
I think the best way, me as a woman, I would look at it as fashion. It's constantly going to be outdated, and you can constantly update it.
And you don't have to replace the ISBN. Okay, the ISBN stays with the work unless you're doing a substantive change. I'll repeat. If you're doing a cover change, you're essentially doing marketing. You're doing a marketing change. The ISBN remains the same. You don't need to allocate a second ISBN or a different ISBN. The only time you do an ISBN is you're doing a substantive change, like a second edition, where you're doing a substantive change to the content. Otherwise, you can repurpose that same ISBN.
Unless you make a mistake and unpublish it, then you need a new ISBN. So you have to be, there is so much to know that you don't know. So if you're gonna go in and you're gonna update the cover, make sure you're only updating the cover. Otherwise, you will need a new ISBN and you will create a whole new world of issues.
Yeah, I had to do that with a client. I had published their book through my Mystic Ink Publishing, and then they wanted to be their own publisher. So I had to totally discontinue that book. They had to get a whole new ISBN and come out with a whole new sort of imprint kind of a thing. It wasn't that expensive and all that, but that's what it takes. Otherwise, like you guys said, unless it's a cover or specific little updates, you got to start over again.
All these things seem simple on the surface, but if you don't do all the research and know what you're doing ahead of time, it can turn into its own quagmire.
Yeah, for Rick, I think what I was talking, or what I heard and triggered a thought in my mind when you were talking about look and see what the standard format is for your genre. The one that I always think of for me is right behind you where it says someone knows, and then it's got somebody's name, Atberry, and there's a human figure, I think. But if it was exactly the same thing and had a horse or had a sunset or had a planet, or, I mean, it could be any image in there, and it could be any book that's on the newsstand now. So I mean, isn't it possible that you may want to differentiate yourself by having slightly different?
That's why I did the blue cover. I thought the blue cover was different. It still spoke to what the content of the book was, but it wasn't moving.
Okay. But it seems like it's just, what would you say, 12% of the cover is populated with something other than letters?
Well, no, go ahead, Patricia, go ahead.
Well, in general, you know, you don't want your cover isn't going to stand out if it's different. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a place that you want to sort of mimic other covers. There's creativity within that, but you don't want to go so far afield that your reader doesn't understand what you're doing. So I always tell people, I used to say this a lot, like, don't make your novel in a square format because you think it's going to stand out. It's just going to look weird. So you really don't want your cover to be murky. You really want to be clear about what you're kind of how you're letting the reader identify with it.
Okay, so what you're saying is you have some freedom to make it unique, but don't make it too unique. If you've got a spy thriller, don't put puppies and flowers on it.
Exactly.
Well said.
But also sort of pay attention to how spy thrillers are laid out, where the title is, how the title is positioned on the cover, where the author name is. You know, there are just so many things. But trying to be, I think your point about the blue novel, the blue cover is really good. Yeah. It was really pretty. It didn't work.
And that graphic was, I think, a good demonstration. I changed both covers on the same day, and I had sales the next day. Folks were going through that was coming up in their key list for thriller, and they saw the change in Tunguska, and it was selling. And it worked, you know, and if it works, don't fix it.
That's an old techie saying.
Do you ever second guess yourself and say, instead of doing the man and the boy, if I'd done a petri dish with some
Constantly.
bacteria?
Yeah, nonstop.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me caveat everything I'm saying with, I'm a sci-fi author. I've done a little post-apocalyptic, or a little paranormal stuff, but I'm a sci-fi author. I'm not a romance author. I'm not, so my perspective's a little skewed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the universal component is the cover gets you the click. And you want them to click and read the blurb. And then you want them to read the sample. So fit the milestones that they're expecting to get them down the road to read your book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
Sure. We got one over here, Penn. Here, Penny, up front. Here, yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Holly, I'm having at least a dozen questions for you about your business model. So if the question I asked isn't the question you wish I'd asked, answer the one that you wish I'd asked instead.
Okay, but don't ask me one at a time,
No, I'm
because
only
I
gonna
won't
ask-
remember them all.
I'm only going to ask you one,
Okay.
which is, where are you primarily making your money? Is it primarily through the upfront fee? Is it primarily through book sales? Is there some other revenue stream you haven't mentioned?
Great question. What a great question. So.
Then answer that one.
Yes. Up until now, it has definitely been the initial fee. The 90% of the money we take goes to covering our vendors. This is not a business you go into to get rich. You just don't. I started this company because I had a special needs child and I needed to work from home. That said, I've been doing it for 10 years now. Our books are starting to do some pretty incredible things. We just had a book that had one author, 3 of his books optioned for a television series. So we are starting to get to a place where the revenue is going to be coming from sales more. I mean, we only take a certain cut of the sales. The author's getting 70%. But as our books become more and more successful and do bigger things, and in the case of this, and I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, we also reach out and get our authors deals overseas with traditional publishing houses. We work with an agent to get them film and television deals. And if we are the ones that secure the deal that the author chooses to use, we get a pretty good cut of it. They can say no, they own the rights to go wherever they want and do whatever they want, but if we end up making the connection and they take it, we get a cut. So as our books continue to do better, as our visibility and brand begin to attract more partners from overseas and in the film and television industry, it's starting to shift.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something, to throw this out there. Do not go to Google, paste your manuscript to translate to Spanish, and then publish in Spanish. Do not trust the online translations. If you're going to do a translation to a foreign market, find a translator to help you do it. In Mandarin, the word ma has like 45 different meanings. Everything from marijuana to rice. So don't do it.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, in my model, when you use KDP, they say if you set the book at this price, this is the royalty you're going to get. And then there's a whole expanded distribution and all that. I also have a Mystic Ink Publishing website, because I've been around for a long time, so I have a following, not massive, but I have a following, I have fans. They'll get in touch with me. I'd like a personally autographed book. Hell yes. Go to my website. It's all set up with Square for credit card payment. They'll come right to me. I'll ship them out. I get a bigger royalty, a little more work. But there are just different ways to go about it to get, and when you do it all right, all that stuff happens, and then in the background you start seeing these nice little deposits into your checking account, because it all happens transparently, like below the surface. So We
A
have
nice-
ways.
A nice thing that I'm seeing too, just kind of adding on to what you're saying, is it used to be really, your book did its best when it was released. And because there are so many more opportunities now, because there is TikTok that is bringing books back to life, because there are all these streaming opportunities, you know, the books that we're seeing become successful, for example, the one that was optioned for the television series, that's one of the first books we published. So that's a great shift. And when you either own all of your rights or the majority of your rights, your book just doesn't go out of print because you didn't sell that 10,000 or meet whatever the traditional distribution is that you better meet before they do another print run. You're holding on to your book in perpetuity, and you never know when you could possibly strike gold.
Yeah, you know, that's a really good point. The other thing, I'm admitting to being an old dog. I have 20 books in print. I've been lucky to get on a big radio show. I got on the radio show and I instantly sold 67 books, but like maybe 20 of them were on my backlist. So people can read something else you did and go, I like this guy as a writer, and then they'll come back. And every once in a while I'll see a spike where somebody bought like 4 of my books at once. I'm like, yes, right? So the more you build, the more places that your book is available, your more opportunities to be discovered. So if you're in this for the long run, you're in this for the long run. You got something, Yvette? Yeah.
Waiting for Penny.
Yeah. And we're almost out, so Yvette's the last question.
You also don't know what new things are going to pop up. BookBub was not such a big deal a while back, but now BookBub's around. You know, my books personally have gotten BookBub deals and the featured deal, and so in a week I'll sell close to 1,000 books, and then that promotes my readers or prompts them or encourages them to go and buy my other books. BookBub wasn't around before. Who knows what's going to be around in another 2 years?
Good point. Yeah.
There's all these lovely things. There's a lot of negatives, but there's a lot of positives too.
Yeah.
One of the things I had on one of my slides, and I'm a firm believer in this, and that's lifelong learning. Be open to learning new things. Just because it's the way we do things today doesn't mean that it's going to be successful next week, next month, next year. Pay attention to what's going on in the industry, listen to what's happening, learn new things.
Or you could join an imprint like Acorn and we'll reach out and tell you when there's new things and say, hey guys, do this.
Amazing.
We're learning all the time and we are sharing it with our authors, and our authors are all connected and they're sharing with each other.
Look at
Yeah,
that,
what-
people learning for you. It's like a dream.
Yes.
So since I'm the last question, I am going to ask my question, but right before that, I'm just going to remind everybody in the room that this discussion is going to be continued again tomorrow morning in this room, a deeper dive into publishing. And so you're all welcome, if you have any unasked questions, to come back in the morning, and the same folks will be going even deeper than they have now. So if you are showering tonight before you go to bed and you're like, oh, I should have asked, just write it down and bring it back tomorrow morning. So here's my question, as someone who helps coach authors to make a decision, you know, what kind of publishing they want. What is an appropriate piece of information to ask from a hybrid publisher to help do that analysis or assessment of whether or not they are healthy, other than the books, like does my type of book match what this particular hybrid publisher is putting out and the quality they're putting out? What is an appropriate thing that someone could ask to identify the health and longevity, perhaps, of a hybrid publisher as a business? So like if I'm going to invest in your stock, I'm going to go read your annual reports. Is there something that hybrid publishers put out there in the world as a business that would be the equivalent of that is totally appropriate for a potential client to ask for?
Not that I'm aware of. I grew up always being told if you want to predict somebody's future, look at their past. So the longer the track record they had, the better idea you have of where they're going and the health of the company if they have longevity. But we're not public, so no. There's nothing I can think of that you could look at unless I guess you went to our taxman. Ask for our public records on our taxes, but no. I would ask questions beyond that, you know. I would, again, going back to what you said not to, but really look at the quality of their books. Are they growing? Are their authors doing things? And if they're growing, if their authors are doing things, then why would that person walk away from it? It's a dream job.
Okay, good job. Applause for my colleagues here.